Hi guys, so I'm here going to be talking today about overcoming failure. That's what we're going to look at. We're going to have a think about what is failure, how does it affect us, how can we overcome failure, and then maybe look a little bit at our faith and how it relates to sin as well. So, what is failure? Cambridge Dictionary says that failure is the fact of someone or something not succeeding, or not doing something that you must do or expected to do, or something not working as well as it should. All of these things are incumbent on there being an expected outcome which is not achieved. For something to fail, we must first know what it means to succeed. I once tried to make eggs Benedict. We'd seen it on MasterChef, Hannah and I thought it looked delicious, so I found the recipe, went and got the ingredients, and I whipped up a plate of eggs Benedict on a toasted bun for Hannah and I to taste. Neither of us had ever tasted eggs Benedict before, and what we can eat can only be described as melted butter on eggs. It wasn't nice. The problem was, I don't know if that's what it was supposed to taste like. Now, I wonder, did I fail at all in my cooking? Or do I just hate eggs Benedict? I don't know, because I didn't know what it meant to succeed. So really, in order to succeed or fail, we must first understand what success looks like. How can failure affect us? When we fail, it hurts. Depending on how much effort we put into the task or the venture, the hurt can be more or less. It can hurt us physically, emotionally, it can hurt relationships, it can hurt financially, socially. And our response to that feeling of pain, of hurt, determines how we fail. We can give up, we can blame ourselves or blame others, we can become down and even depressed, imagining there's no hope for us anymore. We can run from it, we can cast it from our minds and try and never think about it again. We can embrace it negatively and assign this particular failure to become a part of our identity. Perhaps we might call ourselves a failure because we've failed. Or we might try again, but without examining what led to the failure, we may end up repeating the same failure again and again without ever getting closer to succeeding. But I believe the way we overcome failure is to reject its power to hold us, but rather change our perception, to change the way we see it, so we see it as a part of a process. There's this great family movie that we watched a while ago called Meet the Robinsons, and in this movie there's this family of inventors, and when the protagonist meets the inventors, he shows off his invention to them and it fails miserably. There's this quite entertaining but quite powerful scene when they try and teach him an important lesson to keep moving forward. When something goes wrong, we don't give up, we keep moving forward. I also watched a video a while back of a professional skydiver who was attempting a very impressive and difficult jump, and on the video he does loads of preparation, and during his first jump he realises it's going wrong and he's not going to make it, so he pulls up before he reaches his goal. Now, after the jump, he doesn't say he failed. He doesn't say I failed. He says you only fail when you give up. Until you make that decision, you're just in the process of making it happen. This mindset led him to continue planning and trying until the end of the video he achieves exactly what he set out to do. With this mindset, our response is very important when it comes to failure. In fact, he would say, unless we choose to give up, our decision, our response to that moment, he wouldn't even call it failure. Life is full of moments where we fail. We try something and it doesn't work. It isn't what we thought. It doesn't produce what we wanted it to produce. But that is literally how you learn anything new. It is a part of the inevitable process of growth. We try something, it fails, we evaluate and we try again. We learned a long time about the 4 different stages of learning something new. At the first stage is when you think you can do something, but you really can't do something. Like, oh, I can do that, easy peasy. But you have no experience really. The second stage is when you try something for the first time and you immediately or very quickly realise you can't do that at all. The third stage is when you now learn how to do something, but it requires practice, it requires constant thought, it requires focus and work. And the fourth stage is when you reach a point where you can do something without thinking about it. When you do something so well, you have so much experience about it, you don't even think about it anymore, you just do it unconsciously. Perhaps you can think about learning to drive a car, watching a baby learn how to walk, playing an instrument. This process requires you to fail. It is stage 2 and 3 of that process is all about failing, evaluating, trying again. This simple mindset helps us in day-to-day life when we choose perhaps the fastest way to get somewhere, or the best deal in a shop, or the best product to buy in a shop, or perhaps what food your toddler will like. We try something, it doesn't work, we try it again, it doesn't work, we try something new. This process, the mindset even, does become harder when the stakes are higher, when planning or saving for a long time and it doesn't work out. The plan falls apart. It takes a lot of courage and resilience to get back up and start again, to have an honest and deep look into what made it fail and how to avoid those same pitfalls, and to imagine a new way to achieve the same goal. Community can help. Here's another way we can help overcome that. Community can help when we're looking for a new place to get Chinese from or something like that. What do? We read the reviews, don't we? Or we call someone like Ollie, someone we can trust, and say, where's a good place to get Chinese from? Individually, we go through this process every day, don't we? Of learning what works and what doesn't work. And if we can share those experiences with one another, then together we don't need to all go through the same pains. We don't need to all learn the same lessons. If we have failed at something and learned how to succeed, then we can share that with others, and together we can learn a whole lot faster. A famous YouTuber talked about how he became so successful, and he shared how there was a small group of friends all doing the same thing together. And he says that they would share everything they learned together. He says, you're trying to be great at something, you mess up, you learn from your mistakes. In 2 years, you might have learned from about 20 mistakes. If you have 4 other people who are messing up and they teach you what they learn, hypothetically, 2 years down the road, you've learned 5 times more the amount of stuff. So community can help speed up that process also. Now, this is all sound advice. I think it's very helpful, but it is maybe just self-help at the moment. None of that has anything to do with God. We can give people advice on how to overcome failure, but how does God want us to do this? Is there anything we consider in regards to Christ? Did Jesus ever fail? Did he ever learn by trial and error? Can the Son of God error? Is it impossible to consider Jesus learning to read, carve, teach, disciple, believe, heal, tell stories, inspire, understand, without ever making an error? Without ever making a single mistake, there would be no doubt in his village's mind that this man was no ordinary mortal. Instead, they considered him one of their own, one who fell and got up again, one who helped and needed help, one who learned the same way the rest of us learn. So, is it possible Jesus failed? Maybe in as much as we each fail while learning how to succeed. Perhaps that which only becomes failure if it consumes us or drives us to give up. That which may in fact simply be a stepping stone, a process, a path to understanding, to wisdom and to greatness. Perhaps Jesus did that. This part of failure which is only really failure if you give up. And Jesus never gave up, did he? He never gave in. There's not a moment in his life when he gave up on his mission or didn't achieve what he was setting out to do. So much like our skydiver, perhaps we can look at Jesus and say, it wasn't really failure, because it never led to him giving up. It was just him learning. It was just a process of him learning and growing. I don't think failure is the same as sin. Failure is simply not achieving what is expected to achieve. It seems like the Bible, I was looking in the Bible and trying to find examples of success and failure, but it seems the Bible focuses less on success and failure and more on obedience and rebellion. It seems if people are obedient to God, then God's plans often work out for them. And if people rebel against God, then, well, God's plans still work out. They just sometimes work out without them or sometimes against them. I guess maybe we should clarify if what we're talking about is overcoming sin or overcoming failure. I think they're different. Some failure is sin. I know that in the Church of England prayers, when we're praying about our confession about sin, we might say, we have sinned through failure, through weakness, and through our own deliberate fault. There's 3 different ways we can sin. Sometimes we choose to sin because we want to. I wouldn't say that was failure. If anything, that's a success. You think about someone like Jonah, who rejected God's call and ran away. Until he got swallowed by a whale, that was quite a successful sin, wasn't it? He wanted to get out of there and he got out of there. Sometimes we sin because we are weak, or because even though we fully intended to act righteously, but we failed. And that would be failure, wouldn't it? That would be sin that is also failure. The price that Jesus paid allows us to get back up and keep trying. It allows us to not be forever overcome by sin, which so easily ensnares us. To not be tied down and beaten by our sin, but to be forgiven, to be cleaned, and to learn from our failures. And to try again and again and again to live a sinless life, one that is worthy of the calling God has given us. I think failure is also to do with expectations, and it therefore matters greatly what our expectations are. Jesus' most triumphant moment was what looked like his biggest failure. He was starting a revolution, the city was his, and then his opposition turned the tide. They played the game, but they didn't stick by the rules, and they were left on their thrones whilst he was in a tomb with his plans scattered. On the road to Emmaus, we see this honest view of the crucifixion from the people walking. They said, we had hoped he had come to save us. But this moment was actually Jesus' greatest victory. His mission was never to run a revolution. He was always the spark of the revolution. His mission was to die and to rise again. It looked like failure because they didn't know what he was trying to accomplish. I think God wants us to mature and to grow, and always growing closer to him and more like Christ. How can we grow and change if we don't try and fail? Then I guess the other question is, what are we aiming for? What are we expecting? What are we trying to achieve? And how are we trying to succeed? I remember a friend telling me after I confided in him how it seemed like our work wasn't achieving what I hoped it would achieve. He said, what is required of you? What does God actually want from you? Does he want success? Or does he want faithfulness? It says in the Bible what is required is to live justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before God. That is not a goal, it is more of a standard. It is not something to achieve, but it is a way to live my life. Ultimately, we must learn to live with failure and grow from it as a part of human life, but perhaps not because success is our main goal, perhaps because obedience is, faithfulness is. And in aiming to better ourselves, to honour God, to follow his example, we will always fail because we are not Christ. But we must always learn to grow from these experiences in order to be more like Christ, and so we are not overcome by our own failures. I've often struggled with failure and still do. I'm trying to do what God is asking me to do with my work and with my personal life, and inevitably I miss the mark time and time again. I'm not perfect. And the more my purposes align with God's purposes, the more I'm aware of the chasm between who I am and who I should be. And I have learnt to live in that tension. I'm still hard on myself, but I have learned better about my own capabilities. And while I'm always growing and trying to better myself, I know that when I fail, God is not surprised. He knows me better than I do. He is ready to forgive if necessary. But his purpose doesn't change. His call remains. Therefore I continue. I strive, I press on. Because God doesn't expect me to save the world or even Rochdale. He expects me to be faithful to him, to be obedient to him. He expects me to live a certain way, even if I never achieve my calling, like Moses died before reaching the promised land. God still expects me to journey well. Somebody once said, it is more important how you go than where you go. Okay, thanks for listening.